Some films bomb. In this video, I'm going to be watching 7 box office failures in 7 days to see if how much money a film makes is really a big factor to how good the film is, or if there's a lot more to it. Starting off with Damien Chazelle's latest film, Babylon. If you haven't heard of Babylon, which I guess not enough people have, the film follows Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, and Diego Calva, who are all at very different points of their respective Hollywood careers, living their lives and adapting to the ever-changing climate of film. And I loved this movie. It has a great cast, great music, great set pieces, and just from the description alone, the film sounds like it would be a big success. Academy Award winner Damien Chazelle with the likes of Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, and Tobey Maguire too. So why did this film bomb? Well, for starters, this film comes in at a runtime of just over 3 hours, which for the casual viewer in a story they're not already invested in, is immediately quite a big ask. Yes, Damien Chazelle is a big director, but he is not yet a household name to majority audiences, like say Quentin Tarantino. La La Land was really successful, but most people don't know that Damien Chazelle made that film, and it wasn't in the trailer for them to find out. It's a shame because I really loved Babylon, but unfortunately a few marketing decisions really let this film down. And talking of letdowns, next up we have The Green Lantern. Comparing this film to Babylon, I think it's quite obvious why this film didn't do well at the box office. The film isn't good. It looks bad, the writing and story aren't good, and tonally it's all over the place. In fact, I'm not even going to tell you the plot of this one because I will feel personally guilty if you watch it. Babylon came in with mixed reviews. Green Lantern didn't even have that privilege. One comparison I made when watching this film was to James Cameron's Avatar. Both films had a similar budget of around 200 million, but Avatar came out 2 years earlier and looks so much better. You know it's bad when Taika Waititi and Ryan Reynolds, two of the biggest parts of the film, constantly make jokes acknowledging the film's failure.
You did Green Lantern,
It was
right?
definitely Green Lantern.
Right?
I will say though, at least one good thing did come out of this film. Probably one of the most expensive dates of all time, but at least they're happy. Next up on our list, we have Space Jam: A New Legacy. If you haven't seen it, or only know of it because of the original, which by the way is miles better, Space Jam: A New Legacy is very much a standalone sequel. Where the first one stars Michael Jordan, this one follows LeBron James, who, when gets stuck in a virtual server with his son, has to team up with the Looney Tunes in a game of basketball in order to escape. I do want to preface this by saying I'm not a basketball fan, however I did really enjoy the first one. And you'd think, just based on the first one alone, the film would be a big success. Not to mention LeBron's pull. Well, similar to The Green Lantern, even though the film's box office is technically more than the budget, not all of that money goes back to the studio. It has to be split with people like the distributors. Not to mention the production money doesn't go into the marketing of the film. But with all that out of the way, why didn't A New Legacy do too well? Now, the reason isn't entirely the film's fault. COVID-19 was still kicking, and unlike the original, people could rely on streaming services to get their Looney Tunes basketball fix, which by the way, people didn't have to pay for, unlike Black Widow. But I said it wasn't entirely. In my opinion, I really didn't like this film. Again, I'm not a basketball fan, but to me the film just felt like a lifeless 2-hour-long Warner Brothers advert, with a hint of things like...
Did you just say, please dad, dab?
No, I said please.
Dab.
Again, it's a shame, but I'm sure Warner Bros will be fine for cash. Next up on our list, we have John Carter. For some reason, this huge live-action budget film is directed by the guy who made both the Finding Nemo films and WALL-E. I'll get more into that later, but to give you a basic plot summary, John Carter is about an ex-military captain who is transported to Mars and gets caught up in a lot of war and politics. The movie is actually based on books, and to be honest, I didn't mind this film. But to say this movie did well critically would be a huge understatement. and there's actually a few reasons why. Firstly, the movie had no real star power. It did have big actors like Bryan Cranston, Mark Strong, and even Willem Dafoe, who I didn't even realise was in this till after. But they weren't the main part of the film. The poster boy, if you will. Obviously, movies don't always need a huge star as the main part, but in this case, I think it would have helped. But it wasn't just the star power. The whole marketing was a mess. And even if the film had great marketing, due to the cost of production being so high, the film always had a huge uphill battle. I mentioned Andrew Stanton, the critically acclaimed Pixar director. Not only was this film his live-action debut, he also had complete control. Not only with the script and directing, but also with the marketing. Normally, creative control is what all directors seek. But in this case, I think having someone so unexperienced in that field only hindered the project. Even with the small decisions, like not naming the film the more recognisable title, John Carter of Mars. I really enjoyed the concept of this movie, and who knows, maybe I'll even read the books. Hopefully one day this film gets the Dune treatment, and someone more experienced gives this series another go. But for now, the film remains on the list. And next up on the list we have The Last Duel. Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, Ben Affleck and Ridley Scott. These are just a few of the people that worked on this film. So why did it do so poorly? If you don't know the plot, The Last Duel is based on a true story, detailing the events of one of France's last ever trials by combat. The film follows three main characters, detailing their version of the same series of events, with the eventual build-up of the last duel to determine their fates. Honestly, I really enjoyed this film. I thought the subtle differences between each of the versions of events was really well done. I thought Comer's performance was great, and I also really liked the sound design. It's just a shame that no one saw it. Similar to Space Jam, COVID-19 definitely affected this film. But funny enough, Ridley Scott himself actually blamed millennials for this film's failure.
I think what it boils down to, where we've got today, is the audiences who are brought up on these cell phones, the millennium, do not want to ever be taught anything, except unless it's you're told it on the cell phone.
Right.
This is a broad stroke.
I also saw that a lot of people thought Disney put minimal effort into advertising all the films they acquired from the 20th Century Fox merger. Either way, it's just more proof that the quality of the film and its star power don't always equal a successful film. Heck, Ridley Scott also released House of Gucci in the same year. It did worse critically, but made a lot more profit. And is it just me that thought Matt Damon looked a bit like Theo Von in this film? Anyway, next up on our list we have the penultimate film of the video, The Lone Ranger. If you haven't watched it, the film stars Johnny Depp and Armie Hammer as the iconic duo of the Lone Ranger and Tonto, the sole survivor of a group of Texas Rangers and an outcast Comanche. The film sees the two men team up to seek out vengeance for those who have wronged them, and I won't lie, I wasn't really a fan of this one. The final act is better than the other two. I liked some of the action, but it still couldn't save this film for me. There's a lot wrong here, and the film is quite problematic. But one thing I found with this film, and no surprise, most films on this list, is they all have above average runtimes. I actually did the maths, and the average runtime for the films on this list so far is around 2 hours and 27 minutes. Again, I can't say I'm shocked. I mentioned it with Babylon at the start, which I really enjoyed, but having people commit to these runtimes is already an uphill climb. But not just focusing on that. Similar to John Carter, The Lone Ranger had a staggering $250 million budget. It's actually funny I mentioned John Carter, because Disney changed the Lone Ranger script a lot in order to try and avoid their recent failure with that film. It obviously didn't work out, but fair play for trying, I guess. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'd much rather have a sequel to Rango than this film. But next up on the list is the last film, Mortal Engines. Even though the film didn't do great at the box office, I actually remember seeing the trailer for this one advertised in cinema, and at the time I was intrigued. However, Finishing it today, I will say the film had so much untapped potential. Mortal Engines, if you haven't seen it, is about huge monster-like cities that move around on wheels in order to hunt or survive. The film follows two strangers who are put together and slowly unravel a conspiracy surrounding London that could put everyone in danger. You know, it's some of these big-budget live-action CGI films, like this and John Carter, that I really think would do so much better as a TV show. The film has some good stuff in it, and if given more time to develop, could really have been impactful. In this film, it's especially the stuff around Shrike. The film had promise, with a huge name like Peter Jackson attached, and a cast that all worked really well. But to be honest, there wasn't actually much of the machines fighting, like the marketing suggested. Oh, and the film also includes this.
Don't worry about me. We're about to lose our American deities.
I think this one was a lot more a case of the screenplay, and of course, like a lot of these, a budget that is absolutely unattainable. Similar to John Carter, after watching this film I may pick up the books, and hopefully this source material gets another promising shot. So, there you have it. It just shows that the quality of the film and its star power doesn't always equal a huge success. From these films alone, it seems that most of them have runtimes that cause more hindrance than help, with either a budget that is way too high to surpass, or marketing that definitely didn't help the film's case. Thanks for watching.